Topping today's news, a man shot to death on Faith Avenue South early this morning. Another school stabbing on the island of Abaco, this time involving female students. The director of aviation says work on Family Island airports expected to begin as early as this summer, and Atlantis expressing concerns over Royal Caribbean International's approved project for the western end of Paradise Island. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jcn Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. An early morning shooting on Faith Avenue South has claimed the life of another young man here in the capital. Officer in charge of the Criminal Investigation Department, Chief Superintendent Michael Johnson, says police were alerted to the sound of gunshots which emanated in that area sometime around 4:30 a.m. this morning when the victim was found near the Anatole Rogers High School with gunshot wounds to the upper body.
Police were summoned to this area where they discovered the lifeless body of a black male. He was on the eastern side of the street, suffering from what appeared to be gunshot wounds to the head and upper extremities. EMS personnel were called. They checked the body and found no signs of life. As for now, we do not have an identification on this male. There was no ID on him. He was fingerprinted in an effort to get his identity, but we're appealing to members of this community and anybody who was in this area at the time to contact us at 502-999-123 or our crime tipsters line. The male appears to be in his early 20s, and that's all we have so far.
This latest killing comes on the heels of a double homicide in the Fox Hill community on Monday night. To JCN's records, this is the 21st homicide for 2023. An altercation at a high school on Abaco leaves police investigating how the incident turned into a stabbing. Police say a male student was treated and discharged from the Marsh Harbor Clinic on Tuesday after he was attacked and stabbed while on the school's campus by 4 female students. Initial reports revealing that shortly after 9 a.m., while on the school's campus on the SC Boodle Highway, the 4 female students attacked the boy, resulting in him receiving injuries about the body. This is not the first time that a male student has been stabbed at a school on Abaco this year. Just last month, a 17-year-old male student was attacked and stabbed by a fellow male student of the same age. The victim was taken to the local clinic where he was treated and discharged. The juvenile suspect, they took him into custody and he assisted police with their investigations. Education Minister Glenys Hannah Martin is on record saying that this issue of violence among young people must be addressed beginning at home, although she says it requires a collaborative community effort. In this latest incident, police are still investigating the altercation. The Bahamas Family Island Airport's Public-Private Partnership PPP program will strategically position the country to take advantage of the growth in tourism and hospitality, that sector. This coming from Director of Aviation and Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, Dr. Kenneth Romer, during the weekly press briefing at the Office of the Prime Minister on Thursday, a week after the government launched the bidding process for repairs to 14 Family Island airports.
So you're aware that on the 1st of March, a notice for request for pre-qualifications was issued through the doabahamas.com website, and the purpose, of course, was simply to seek relevant industry qualifications and invite qualified and experienced concessionaires to be a part of the design, the building, financing, operating, and maintaining a portfolio of Family Island airports. We believe that it's going to be a multi-stage process. It begins with the RFPQ. It's going to go into the RFP, where we will be inviting persons to negotiate with us, and then it will ultimately end with persons who would make final offers to us. But again, we foresee it attracting interested and qualified parties, and we're going to solicit competitive market-led proposals. And it will lead to the process where we evaluate these proposals and eventually, as I said before, select qualified and experienced partners.
Dubbed the Family Island Renaissance Program by Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper, Dr. Romer says these programs will revolutionize aviation by operating the airports as profit centers with the aim of maximizing revenue and managing.
But the following 14 Family Island airports have been selected specifically for this program. We're going to go in order of airports: Abaco, the Leonard Thompson International Airport at Tier 3, Sandy Point and Treasure Key airports, Andros, Congo Tong Airport, Cat Island, New Bight International Airport as a part of this particular portfolio. Eleuthera is going to get triplets when it speaks to Governors, Harbor North, Eleuthera, and also Rock Sound. Exuma, main Exuma Airport, is going to be targeted for development. As a matter of fact, we are pleased that development has continued and construction in earnest in Georgetown, Exuma, and the Exuma Keys, 3 in the Exuma Keys, specifically Black Point, Farmers, and Staniel Key. Long Island, again, is targeted for development through Dedmonds Key International Airport, and San Salvador has also been targeted, very important again for Club Med, and so we have targeted 14 in this particular portfolio.
He goes on to say that airports on those islands no longer meet the current and growing demands of airlift and capacity.
I think it's important for us to also know that there are certain islands that stand out when it comes to your overall development. Exuma continues to be ahead of 2019. Eleuthera ahead of 2019. Cat Island ahead of 2019. Andros ahead of 2019. Long Island ahead of 2019. Abaco and Grand Bahama are trending very positively as it relates to their recovery. So you'll be very pleased that out of the 14 airports targeted for development, all of the Family Islands, with the exception of San Salvador, have helped us to make a strong case as to why we should be focusing on airport infrastructural development. All of those islands have actually exceeded 2019 numbers, so we feel very comfortable at matching development of airlift and also performance of our Family Islands.
Dr. Roma is confident that by the summer, shovels will be in the ground. Following the government's announcement that it has granted approval for Royal Caribbean International's RCI's $100 million beach club on the western end of Paradise Island, President and Managing Director of Atlantis Paradise Island, Audrey Oswald, expressed concerns, arguing that the project's approval is not only premature, but she says there are too many red flags when it comes to the environment and the economy. Ms. Oswald, in a statement, urged the government to put the brakes on, and there are still unanswered questions, some 50 of them raised by Atlantis. She also argues that the RCI development in the end will privatize Paradise Island's only remaining public beach. Well, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper, in addressing the concerns raised by Ms. Oswald, reiterated that approval is subject to environmental impact assessment and an environmental management plan. Add to that, he says, broad public consultation will be a part of the process, noting that the Bahamas has one of the most stringent processes in the world for environmental protection, which will be followed for all developments in the country. Deputy Prime Minister Cooper says the Department of Environment and Physical Planning and the Ministry of Works are aware of the questions raised by Atlantis and assures that these questions will be addressed. While Zane Lightbourne, State Minister for Education, Technical and Vocational Training, was announcing the signing of an industrial agreement between the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institution and its non-managerial and lectural staff, in the House of Assembly, it was suggested that the government is guilty of union busting in those negotiations. We hear more in this next report.
You know, the government continues to paint a certain picture, and the Bahamian people are having a different experience out there, Mr. Deputy. And so again, no matter how the member for Yamoussoukro tries to engage again in these verbal gymnastics, the truth is that the Bahamas Public Services Union said that the government was guilty of union busting, and if you have an issue with that, you need to take it up with the Bahamas Public Services Union and not this member. So, also, Mr. Deputy, signing whatever agreements does not negate the fact that in that moment they may have been guilty of union busting. So speak to the union. Mr. Deputy.
As the State Minister for Education, Technical and Vocational Training, Zane Lightbourne, proudly announced the signing of an industrial agreement between the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute and the non-managerial and non-instructional staff, opposition Member of Parliament for St. Barnabas, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, said the government was accused of union busting during those negotiations. Minister Lightbourne, who was making his contribution on the mid-year budget debate on March 6, ignored the claims of union busting and instead touted the fact that the Davis administration has signed at least 16 industrial agreements since winning the general elections. He went on to share some of the details and benefits of the 3-year BTVI agreement that extends to 2025.
The first industrial agreement ever negotiated between BTVI on behalf of the government and the Bahamas General Workers Union was just recently signed. The initial cost for this BTVI agreement Bahamas General Workers Union is estimated to be $157,000. That is money in the hands of the workers of this country.
The industrial agreement is supposed to benefit over 50 union members at BTVI. However, while the agreement was being signed at the office of the Prime Minister on March 1st, at least 24 members of the BTVI union protested against the signing and asked for it to be delayed, claiming they were not involved in the month-long negotiation process. This was refuted by BTVI Representative Attorney Obi Ferguson, who said all sides were invited to the negotiation meetings. Minister Lightbourne shared some of the terms in the BTVI agreement.
The term of this agreement grants the staff members new and improved salaries, enhanced leave benefits, and allowances. Additionally, these staff members are receiving merit pay increases to be applied to the base for the life of the agreement. The agreement provides clearly defined protocols for scheduling of BTVI employees, regularization, performance reviews, promotions, transfers, and discipline and discharge guidelines. We are pleased with the outcome of negotiations and believe this agreement will solidify an atmosphere of good industrial harmony relations between BTVI and Bahamas General Workers Union.
Meanwhile, opposition Member of Parliament for St. Anne's, Adrian White, suggested the Davis administration is now forced to sign agreements with various unions because of promises made in a memorandum of understanding with several unions prior to the general elections, when the unions pledged their support to the then opposition PLP. Mr. White said this is nothing the government should be proud of, suggesting the Davis administration is deeply indebted to the unions. And finally, in this segment, the Australian woman accused of murdering her husband back in 2015 has been acquitted. The verdict came down on Thursday around 8 p.m., delivered by a 9-member jury following a retrial. Donna Vasili was charged in 2015 with murdering her husband, Australian podiatrist Philip Vasili. The 60-year-old man was found stabbed to death in the guest house of the couple's home in March of that year. In November of that year, Ms. Vasili was convicted of murder and sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, the Court of Appeal quashed the conviction in 2017, and 2 appellate judges, Dame Anita Allen and Justice John Isaacs, ordered a retrial in the case. Mrs. Vasili then appealed the matter before the country's highest court, the Privy Council in London. However, in March of 2020, the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council ruled that she had a case to answer. The Bahamas Court of Appeal was allowed to decide if a retrial would take place. Last night, a Supreme Court jury found Mrs. Vasili not guilty after hearing arguments for nearly 6 months before Senior Justice Bernard Turner. The Vasilis were married for 34 years and lived in the exclusive gated community of Old Fort Bay when Mr. Vasili was found with stab wounds to the neck. Mrs. Vasili's legal team included British attorney K.D. Knight, KC, Damian Gomez, KC, and Owen Wells. We'll take a break here and we'll be right back after these commercials.